All right, it is Thursday evening and John Giles is on the line. Good evening, John.
Evening, Nathan.
So the longest football season in history finally coming to an end, and a disappointing end, I think most would feel, for the Republic of Ireland. The defeat over in Greece put huge pressure on Stephen Kenny. They got the job done eventually against Gibraltar in Dublin on Monday night, but that game against Greece was one that was been built up to be decisive for Stephen Kenny, for his future and for signs of progress for this team. What are your thoughts on what happened in that game?
Well, it was very disappointing, Nathan, I must say. Greece, I think Greece had a good side. We don't know, well, I don't know much about them. But they totally outplayed us, and there's no doubt. I mean, 2-1 flattered us. I think it could have been 4-1 on the night. And it's one of the worst shows I've seen from an Irish team, especially since Stephen has taken over. It was really, really bad. And, coming into the Gibraltar game, you would have expected more from the team selection, Nathan. For the Gibraltar match, there were 6 changes starting the game. 6 changes. Now, at this stage in Stephen's career, I would expect anyway, would know your best team, and your best team would be out there. It was a bad sign to see a bad defeat by Greece, and then 6 changes to start against the Gibraltar match. Wasn't good.
From watching that Greece game, what went wrong?
Everything seemed to go wrong. We couldn't get the ball. They were by far better than I expected them to be. But we never closed them down. They had plenty of time on the ball. They scored a goal. It could have been more, as we know, in the game. I mean, Basuna, the goalkeeper, was terrific. But I expected a lot more in that particular match. But there was nothing. We didn't get them in midfield. We didn't get on the ball. We didn't get close to them. They just played us off the pitch, Nathan.
There were questions and a bit of surprise when the team selection was made that it felt like a very attacking Irish side away from home. And listen, maybe people have been calling out for more attacking Irish sides away from home. Did he take too many risks in a game in Athens?
Well, I don't know whether he was taking risks or felt that he had to do it, but it proved to be wrong, because in the next match there were 6 changes from the starting team, Nathan. Now, Stephen has been in the game, manager for 3 years now?
Yeah, coming up on 3 years.
You definitely know your best team at that particular stage. Now, whether he was responding to some criticisms he had about being a more attacking team or whatever it might be, in management you have to do what you believe to be yourself, and obviously I've no doubt that he believed that what he was doing correct for the Irish match, for the first match against Greece. But I would have thought after 3 years you should know, in my opinion, what is your best team, regardless of what you hear from anybody else. You see the players, you know them better than anybody else. So I think Stephen made a mistake there. Everybody makes mistakes, but I think that was a mistake for that match.
Is he making too many mistakes?
Well, things have been going reasonably well up to that particular game, in my opinion, Nathan. So I was just surprised at the selection of that particular match, which the selection of the matches was the most important thing of the lot. And then proved to be the case for the next match, because I think there were 6 changes to the starting team in that particular game. So it was a disappointment, definitely, against Greece, who looked to be a much better team than I expected them to be. And it was a poor performance for us and a bad result going into the Gibraltar game.
We'll talk about your former colleague Liam Brady in a while, but he was saying after that game that this was the worst group of Irish players that he had seen in his lifetime, was very concerned and was a bit of a worry about the lack of talented players that he saw coming through. When you look at that team, would you have similar concerns?
Well, there were stages, particularly I think in my time at management, we'd have quite a few what was then First Division players, Nathan, there's no doubt about that. And Big Jack had an exceptional group of players, Nathan, because the rules changed for getting players in to play for Ireland that hadn't been there before. And he had I think Jack had a great group of players and did really well to get to the World Cup finals. We haven't had as good a group of players, there's no doubt, since that particular time. When we've got, if you look at the Irish team now, we've got the goalkeeper's outstanding player. Collins is at Wolves, as we know, and he started very well, but hasn't done very well recently. We've got Ferguson coming into the team, who's, I think, will be a terrific player. He's only 18, he's a smashing lad. But it's when you look around, we had Seamus Coleman, I think, could have got into those particular teams that I mentioned, and unfortunately he's injured at the moment, but he's been a great servant for us. So if you look at the team that we have now, there'll be very, 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 very few players would have got into the team that Big Jack had. There's no doubt about that.
The midfield seemed to be an issue in both games for probably different reasons, because there were different types of matches where Ireland didn't have a huge amount of the ball in Greece, whereas they dominated possession against Gibraltar but struggled to create a huge amount through the middle. The issues that Josh Cullen in particular seem to have over the two games, are they caused by the setup of the team, by the tactics, or should he individually just be able to do a bit better?
Well, they could have all done better in the first match, Nathan. In the second match, I mean, against Gibraltar we were terrible again, but what was very, very pleasing, I'd give credit to Stephen there, they didn't lose their head at half time, Nathan, and it's very, very to lose your head at that particular stage where you should be in well on top. We weren't well on top. We didn't play well in the first half, but I thought in the second half was as good as could have been played in that particular match. They got on the ball, they used the ball, there was patience, because it's very easy to panic in that situation in the second half when you're expected to be 2 or 3 or 4 up against Gibraltar, Nathan, and you're not playing well. But nobody lost their head in the second half, and particularly Stephen, because you can tell by the way the team played. They played it cool. They kept playing the way it should be played, and finished up winning 3-0, as we know. And that was very, very encouraging. From my stand on it, it was very, very encouraging performance in the second half, despite the fact it was Gibraltar and everybody expecting you to win. First half we didn't play well. It could have been a panic situation. It wasn't, and finished well in the end.
So just on that Greece game and the first half of Gibraltar then, and particularly the midfield performance, and probably loops back to that question of quality. Is there anything Ireland and Stephen Kenny could have done differently in setup that would have got more out of Josh Cullen? Like, is there more there that he can dominate possession a bit more? And maybe he did dominate possession but just didn't do anything with it. It felt as though in the first game against Greece that they lost control of the middle section completely and were totally overrun, and then it looked as though they just lacked creativity in the first half against Gibraltar. Is that down to the individual? Is that down to Cullen as a player, or is that down to the way the team is set up?
No, it's down to the player, unless he's been told to do certain things that we don't know. But I'd be amazed at that. I mean, I think if Stephen picks the team, he picks them for what he knows they can do. I don't think he would be telling them to do certain things that would spoil his game. I don't think that would be the case, Nathan. It was just certainly. I think they were surprised in the first match against Greece that Greece were so good and dominated the game totally. I think they were taken by surprise there. But again, I would say in the second match there were 6 changes for the starting teams. That's a lot, Nathan. You know, if you look, you're talking about Cullen in particular. I don't think we have anybody really in the middle of the field that dominates matches in the club teams that they play for.
Yeah, and that's a problem, because there's not a dominant midfielder waiting in the wings. There's no Roy Keane or John Giles or Liam Brady there ready to step in who is playing at that level.
No, funny enough, there's a shortage of players. Generally, if you look in England, I mean, they have a big selection of players, but they don't have a Liam Brady or a Roy Keane. You know, in England, even They have a lot of great players around that, but we have a lad from West Ham,
Declan Rice.
Declan, who could be playing for us, is a very, very good player. But he's not a player. He's not a Liam Brady or a Keane. Do you know what I mean? He's good at what he does. But England don't have a player in the middle of the field that dominates in a way that, say, Graham Souness did in his day as well. They're just not there at the moment. And if England suffer with the selection of players they have, Nathan, I think we're bound to suffer in that particular department.
Those games against Gibraltar, they're always difficult in one way. You even look at all their fixtures in the group so far. They've lost by 3-0. They've in a similar manner. They've held tight in the first half and probably just ran out a little bit of steam. When you're watching that first half in Ireland, just have 90% possession of the ball, it felt like. They go out the wings, it's a cross in, it's blocked, comes back to the midfielder, rinse and repeat, and nothing comes of it. What can you be doing in that situation?
Well, you can certainly be playing better, Nathan. You know, the crosses could be better. You could dominate a bit more. I think what happens in games against Gibraltar, I don't think we put as much pressure on them as we could have done. You know, because they don't have good players. So if you give them time and space, like any player, they can be reasonably good. But our possession of the ball wasn't good. We didn't use it well to really get at them. Didn't put them under pressure as much as we could have done. But in the second half, we did. Actually, we got on the ball. We played the ball well. We played with patience. And I think the lad coming on in the left wing, I can't think of his name.
Mikey Johnston.
Yeah, I think he was good for us. He was wide. He was taking people on. It freed McLean a bit to do it. Like in the end, it was. I put it down to a good performance. Because I've played in a few matches like that myself, Nathan, when you're supposed to be winning 6-0, you're not. And everybody loses their nerve a bit, and it finishes up a disaster. Now, what was good in the second half, they came out very cool, played it, and took the chances at the right time, although they were near the end. I thought the second half, everybody would say, well, it should be against Gibraltar, but sometimes when you play against a team like that and you're not playing well, everybody can panic. People don't want the responsibility to get on the ball. That didn't happen. I mean, we played against Gibraltar the way it should be played against a team like that, who were going to defend all the time. And they probably ran out of steam as well, Nathan, to be quite honest. But the Irish team, from our point of view, they took advantage of it and won comfortably in the end. So it was good. It was. I was pleased with the performance in the second half. It could have been panic. I've seen it before, Nathan. I've probably played in a couple of teams that panicked against teams that you should be beaten well, and the crowd get a bit impatient. That didn't happen. We played well enough to keep the crowd as quiet as possible in not getting onto the players. So finish up. Last 45 minutes was a good performance, but over the two performances, I was surprised that Stephen picked the team that he did, having been in the job for 3 years, to be making big changes, 6 changes in the second match, I should say. To I think definitely you get to know your best team as quickly as you possibly can.
So how concerned would you be about that? That we are still 3 years into this and there's changes between matches. In both games there were substitutions at half time to try and change the system, that there's a lot of just trying to figure it out on the fly. Well,
that's gone and done now. So I think it's never too late to learn, and I think Stephen would learn from that now, going into the match. In other words, the next time we get into a situation, I'll definitely pick what I consider to be the best team for the first match, or any match for that particular for that particular reason. I think the way there was bound to be pressure. First of all, I think everybody was. Well, I was very, very surprised with how good Greece were. That's looking at from the opposition point of view. Disappointing that there were 6 changes from the first match to the second match, having been in the job for 3 years. I think Stephen will have learned a lot from that, and going into the next match. I think in the end he was okay. I think he'd be okay. You have to give him the run now, Nathan. There's no point in talking about changing the manager and that. let him get on with it now until the end of this competition.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you next, because after the Greece defeat, there was a lot of speculation starting to mount about his future, and Gibraltar's always going to be a must-win. They got that victory, and maybe that has died it down, and it did feel around the stadium that there was still broad support for what Stephen Kenny was trying to do, and an acknowledgement of the young players he's brought in and the qualities of players he's working with. Do you remain confident then that he should stay in charge?
Oh, definitely. I wouldn't change anything now. I wouldn't. I think he made a bit of a mistake going into the Greece game, but I think Stephen, like all managers, you learn as you go along as well, Nathan. I think you'd look at that and say, well, probably shouldn't have done that for the first match, but all's well that ends well. So no, I wouldn't have any fears about getting rid of him or sacking him or anything at this particular stage. Definitely not. No, I'd let it go now, all the way.
I wanted to ask you just about a couple of other players. You mentioned Evan Ferguson, 18 years of age, got his first competitive goal against Gibraltar. We're going to put a lot on him, it feels, over the next 5 or 10 years to deliver for Irish football. What are your thoughts on how he performed over the 2 games?
I think he's a great prospect. He's the best prospect we've had for a long time. He'll come good. I think he's the real McCoy. Yeah, he's a smashing lad. He's a team player. He's nothing big-headed about him. And 18, he's only a kid, and he's got the physique, as we know. I think he's got it in his head as well. I think he's a team player. I think he's an honest kid. I haven't seen him do anything wrong at all yet. Nothing that's going to stop him, Nathan, for being one of our best players.
Yeah. Is he good enough already that you build your team around him?
Yes. He's a centre forward, as we know. He's a big lad. His control is good. He'll get goals. His attitude is good. The only thing is you don't want to be putting too much pressure on him at his age. I think he'll come along. I think he'll be really good as he gets older, Nathan. But usually at 18, no matter how good they are, they can be helped along as well. And I'm sure that'll happen as he goes along. But I think his attitude on the pitch, I don't know the lad off the pitch at all, but his attitude on the pitch seems to be perfect in that he plays for the team, he gets his goals, because most goalkeepers are very, very selfish lads, Nathan, as we know. They're really good at their job. If you take Ronaldo, for example, I don't think Ronaldo cared about anybody else but himself.
No.
But he was one of the great goal scorers, when this kid seems he plays for the team. He doesn't look anything like Ronaldo in his attitude to his fellow players. And I think he has all the basics to be a really top-notch player for us.
And at the other end of his career then is James McLean, who captained Ireland on Monday night, his 100th appearance. It's a heck of a career he's put together for himself.
Yeah, I think he should be still in the team. I think he's a fit lad. I've never ever seen him not give his best. Ever. He just has that attitude now, and he doesn't play well all the time. Nobody plays well all the time. But I've never seen him in a match where he's playing. I don't like him at left back. I don't think it suits him at all. But in his left wing position, midfield position or left wing position, I've never seen him play without giving everything for the team, Nathan. I think he's a great example to the young players.
The difference between the left back position, left wing position, was that really shown between the two halves, in that even though he was technically a wing back in that first half, it wasn't until Mikey Johnston came out and actually there was somebody quite close to him inside that he was properly able to get at the Gibraltar defence and have some space, because time and time again the first half, both of them on either side, it was just get to the end line, pull it back, hope for the best, whereas we probably saw with the 2 assists, particularly in the second half, the quality that's still there.
Oh yeah, he's been a top class player for years. I think what happens with the likes of players like him, he's taken for granted. I don't like him at left back at all. Actually, I'm not keen on wing backs at all. but he's a left winger. It's very hard to be a top class left winger like he is, and a top class fullback. I've never seen it. I've never seen the player doing it yet. I mean, sometimes the matches look good coming from we're on top, and you're coming as the best left back, but not defensively. I've never seen anybody do it.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody do it, Nathan. They just, defenders are defenders, and they have it in them. But you take a left winger and put him at left back or wing back or whatever it's about. But wing back have to 50% of the game have to defend, and 57. And you're not going to be on top for 100% in a match. I don't like wing backs at all. I don't mind a full-back playing as a wing-back, Nathan, because he's going to be defending. But I don't like a left winger or a midfield player playing in that position.
All right, we'll leave it there on Ireland. Just before we talk Liam Brady, one other thing that's going on in football at the moment, obviously the transfer window is open. There's a lot of speculation today about Declan Rice. It looked as though Arsenal were leading, but Manchester City now speculation that they might go in. What's going on at City is fascinating. It does seem as though it's going to be a summer of massive turnover in terms of their players. Ilkay Gundogan expected to go to Barcelona. Talk today that Bernardo Silva will leave and go to Saudi Arabia. Kyle Walker been linked with a move away from the club. 2 or 3 other players potentially moving on as well. Having just completed the treble, Pep isn't stopping. It's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on with ripping this team apart and putting it all together again.
Well, he's in a very fortunate position, Nathan, because he has the resources to do it. You know, he gets some money now for the players going out. But I don't think the money's going to be a problem to him to get the best players available. I mean, I would go for Rice straight away, no doubt about that.
Does Rice get in that Manchester City team?
Sorry?
Declan Rice, does he get in that Manchester City team?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Well, his Gundogan is gone, and you're talking about Roberto, Silva, is he gone?
Yeah.
Like for what it's worth, if I was in Pep's position, I'd go for Rice straight away. You know, he's a really top class player, Nathan. And I'm sure, you see, I think with Pep has been at City for a good few years now. He'll have his scout and see him. The big decision he has to make is, who can I let go? That's for sure. Do I hang on to a player for another season? They've just won the treble. Gundogan has had a good season. All the players you mentioned, I think Walker's been outstanding. He's 32. Pep has to make a decision now. Okay, those players have done great for me, but I've got to make changes. Now, what I've got to do is get the best players in. It's all about, for management, even at lesser teams, bringing players in, letting players go. It's what it's all about. That's your judgment. And having won the treble, it would be very easy to say, okay, we'll go again. But these players are going to be a year older. And I think he's probably right in what he's doing now. But I'd say he would know. I'd say his scouting system and he himself would know who he wants in. If he's letting 3 go out, he's going to get 3 in. And I think Rice will go to me. He have the resources to get Rice. That's one straight away, Nathan. And that's what you have to do in management. You have to make the big decisions. A lot of managers slip up by getting, fond of the players, have to keep him. He's been a good lad for me. The thing is, football is ruthless, Nathan. What you've done for the player in the past is dead and gone. For managers, what can you do for me now? And he's making that decision now. It's like, okay, they've been good players, they've been great players, but I need to get players in. And that's his judgment. We'll know next season, by next season, the end of next season, whether his judgment is right or wrong. But the big thing he has the resources there. They have the money, City of the Bear, to get what are considered the best players. And usually when you get a Rice, you don't have to be a genius to know that he's a top-class player. It's they're there for the taking, or they're made there for Manchester City, depending on who else he's gone to. But if you look at what he's brought in the last few years, actually the only player that really hasn't done well for him is the Leeds United player.
Yeah, Calvin Phillips.
Hasn't done it. But I think one time he came back from the England and he was overweight. So that wouldn't be a good. Pep wouldn't go for that. These guys have to be top class professionals, and he hasn't played many matches for them, so he's been a disappointment. But he can get over that by getting Rice in, and players are similar to Rice in different positions. He has the resources, and everybody, most people would want to go to Manchester City anyway. But now it's his judgment. His judgment on these players going out. His judgment has to be right now on the players coming in. That's how they're judged, managers are. But if you have the resources, it gives you a good bit of a chance, Nathan.
All right, we need to take a quick break, John. I do want to talk about Liam Brady and the fact he stepped away from the RTE panel, but we'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. It is Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you this evening. John Giles is on the line. John, the news came through earlier in the week that Monday night's game against Gibraltar was going to be the end of an era. Liam Brady, his last time on the RTE panel after a quarter of a century, following in the footsteps of yourself and Eamon Dunphy. Very much felt like the end of an era, considering just how big the panel was for so long. What are your memories of when Liam first came onto the panel? Did you give the recommendation?
No, I'd no say in it, Nathan. But I certainly would have agreed with it. You know, I knew Liam well. I played with him. He was, in my opinion, a world-class player, and I always described him as a beautiful player. I mean, there's some world-class players, they're not easy on the eye in what they do. But Liam was, I saw him first playing at Leeds for Arsenal. I wasn't playing in the match. I was injured, and I thought, what a player. And actually, he was brilliant. His control of the ball. Yeah. He could beat players. He was with players that people said, I'd love to go and watch. Well, I love watching him myself. He was brilliant. And I went to see him on the coach after the match because I was player manager of the Irish team. And we were going up for a trip to South America, and he was only a kid, but I did pick him. But you didn't have automatic release of players, and Bertie Mee wouldn't let him go. And Liam didn't even know about it. You know, he wasn't even told about it, right, for that particular trip. But I picked him for his first match was against Russia in a competitive match, which we won well in Daly at 3-0, one of our big wins, and he was outstanding. When he first got the ball, outstanding. Liam was an beautiful player to watch. I think he was a great player, and had this great style about him, left-footed, goes past players, and a good approach, good attitude to the game. I think when he came on the panel, I think he actually improved the panel, Nathan, to be honest. We were going well, Eamon, myself and Bill, and he brought something new and creative to the panel, and was a very, very good pundit. Obviously, it's broken up now, and it broke up a few years ago when Bill sadly passed away, and Eamon and I then were kicked off in a nice way, Nathan. And Liam stayed on, but I think the general opinion is that the panel is not as good as it used to be, but Liam has done his stuff in a big way on the pitch and as a pundit.
Yeah, well, there was certainly a period when I was growing up that we were tuning in for the panel regardless of what the match was, because we wanted to see what you were going to say afterwards. The dynamic between the three of you, where you were the senior pundit and Eamon had his own special role in there, was did you see Liam as an ally when he was on that panel in terms of the way he looked at football? Not particularly as an ally. No, we agreed on something. We disagreed on certain things as well. Liam had a mind of his own, as you know, and Eamon very much a mind of his own. So I think that's what made the panel work. I mean, if you get three people saying the same thing or not wanting to say what they want to say, Liam was when he first got on the panel had a mind of his own and didn't matter what I said or Eamon said. He had a mind of his own. Bill did his own magic, really, as the presenter. He was absolutely brilliant, and Eamon was amazing at what he did. Eamon had a different attitude, a different approach to me, and we all had different approaches and attitudes and ideas about what we said. And we were all independent enough. Bill was independent to do what he did. Liam did well because he was coming into a panel that had been going well. It would have been easy for him to say, well, I'll go along with whatever John says or Eamon says. That wasn't the case. Eamon didn't expect him to do that. Eamon admired him because he came on and said what he wanted to say.
and so did I. So he actually improved the panel that was quite successful at the time, I think now he'll be a big loss to them.
He obviously had time as a manager at Celtic and a short spell at Brighton as well, and then was in with Trapattoni when he was the Ireland manager. Was he always someone, even when you think back to knowing him as a player, was he always someone who was a very strong analyst of the game?
Well, he always had a good knowledge of the game, and usually when you're playing with players, as I did for Liam, you don't see them as a panelist. You know, it's like you get lads come in as panelists that I've seen. So, well, I didn't think he'd be any good. I never ever thought of Liam that way because I was too busy. We're too busy playing together in the match to win matches at that particular time. But Liam was a lot younger than me. I mean, I think he came into the team when he was only 19. I think I was 41 at the time. You know. But he was immediate. He had the temperament to do it. He had the ability to do it, Nathan. He was blessed with the ability to do it at any level on the pitch, and that's what he did. And obviously, a lot of players I've met wouldn't be good analysts, the top players. But Liam was well able to speak. Eamon was brilliant. Eamon always had a great command of the English language, and had his own ideas and could express him. Eamon always expressed himself brilliantly on anything that he did. Liam was only there to do the football, and he expressed himself brilliantly doing what needed to be done. So, along with Bill and Eamon and Liam and myself, it was a good panel, and people watched it and enjoyed it, which was the main thing, Nathan.
I'd go as far to say it wasn't a good panel, John. It was a great panel.
Well, Eamon would agree with you on that.
I'm sure he would. You had plenty of crack through the years, and I'm sure we'll go on and have plenty more good nights out as well. Were there many fallings out? There was obviously very public falling outs at times between yourself and Eamon and Liam and Eamon around Saipan and Roy Keane. Did yourself and Liam, was there ever anything football-wise that when it came to the punditry became so serious you'd have a bit of a falling out about it?
No, we'd have a disagreement. We never fell out over it. I mean, Liam had his opinions on football, and I had my opinions on football, and I think we always respected that. I mean, Eamon had his ideas on football, but I don't think in the panel we never thought, I don't agree with that. I think you're wrong there. You could express yourself without having to say that. You just gave your own opinion. And if sometimes you would agree with Liam and Eamon, sometimes you wouldn't, and people enjoy that as well because finish up could at times finish up as a little bit of a row. But I think there was respect from everybody. We respected Bill respected us, and Eamon and Liam, and luckily enough we got on well on the panel to do, as you said, we had a couple of rows, but we got over that. But we didn't want to never let it show in our opinions on the game that we were doing.
Like football punditry.
I think that the audience trust us. The audience never going to agree with everybody what they're saying on the football, but they respect your opinion. That was the big thing.
Football punditry has gone. I think they most definitely did. That was the point I was going to make, was that football punditry has gone such a different way now. When you look at the coverage of the Champions League final, it's almost essential for every big game that you have a former player of the club who therefore is a supporter of the club on covering that team. The fact that the three of you were somewhat removed, I'm just wondering about that period. And did you fully understand the way the nation tuned in post game and how they hung on your every word for what you were going to say about whether it was the international team, a performance, a Champions League game? It doesn't strike me as you did.
Yeah, it did, definitely, because I always felt that. See, I used to watch the games myself when I was young, for playing even at the panels, and that, you know what I mean. So you make your own mind up. If I was doing it, I had no intention to do it at that time. I didn't agree with a lot of what people said on the panel. A lot of them, I didn't think they were honest in what they were doing. They wanted to say what they felt the public wanted to hear. That's why I was in punditry. So when I was going into it, I thought, well, all I'll try to do is give an honest opinion, regardless of anybody else's opinion. I think Eamon was the same and Liam was the same, so we didn't have any, I would say, bullshit, to be quite honest. You said what you believed. Because I felt as a player, when I used to watch the television in Ireland or England, that there were some great players that weren't regarded as great players, Nathan. And there were some ordinary players that were on the panel, people were talking about were great players. And I thought a lot of them were being dishonest, because this guy was supposed to be a great player, therefore he had to say he was a great player. And he wasn't a great player, in my opinion. So I don't think I think there was a lack of honesty watching it. This was now in England most of the time, with people who were on the panel. And I think also on the panel, a lot of them were sort of pushed to say certain things or regard it in a certain way. Like Eamon made a big difference. When Eamon came on the Irish panel, they used to have a meeting beforehand, and people used to tell you what we're going to talk about. Right? This was an RTE. And Eamon was on the panel before me. And Eamon's attitude was, it's going to come from us. We're going to set out what we're going to talk about. And Tim O'Connor, who was the head man, backed him on it, right? Because when Eamon first started, he was the only one. He was in on his own. And you'd have somebody in RT saying, right, this is what we're going to talk about, right? Well, none of these guys hadn't got a clue about football, right? But Eamon was pally with Tim O'Connor. So Tim didn't really want me on when I was in. Eamon said, did you get John on? And Tim said, nah, John, no point in getting John doesn't say anything. But he didn't realise I'd finished playing then, I could say what I wanted to say. So Eamon got me, and as you know, Tim said, okay, you do it from the panel. You make the decisions. And that's what we did. Bill came into it, so there was Bill, Eamon and myself, but we could say what we're going to talk about. And no interference, Nathan. That's what made it good in many ways, because I know I went on the panel once in England, and you had a fella there telling you what you were going to say. Who never played football, I hadn't got a clue about football. So it was run from the panel. That's the way it was run at the early day. And Tim O'Connor, who was the head of sport, backed that. So what you heard from with Eamon, myself, and at the start was what we believed in and what we wanted to say. And that makes a huge difference to it.
That came across so clearly on the TV, because I think one of the reasons that people love tuning in and had so much respect for you was that there was always that sense of, well, even when the ad break kicked in, that you'd still be rowing about it. You'd still be having a disagreement about it. And when you'd leave RTE afterwards and you might head into town for a drink, you'd still be rowing about it. That this was something you actually cared about. Oh yeah,
that was your opinion. There's nobody telling you like you should be talking about it. This is your opinion. And I always felt it was very, very important to be very honest about the players, because a lot of time I would say, I don't think he is a great player. I think Joe Bloggs is a great player. You know what I mean? Whoever and so did Eamon. We had free go to say what we believed in. And look, obviously, I had different opinions of Eamon had different opinions of me. Bill was good at doing what he did, but we never really fell out over it. Nathan. You know what I mean? Like, I'd never said, Eamon, I think you're wrong there. Or if I did, or Eamon said, well, it was very seldom. You just gave your own opinion. Eamon did his opinion, I give my opinion. But you don't go out of your way to say, well, I don't agree with you there, because it's an opinion. You can't say somebody else, I don't believe in that, and your opinion. It's an opinion, and we were free to do that. And Bill was excellent at getting the best out of Eamon and myself, of course, and Liam, of course, when he came in. Bill was brilliant at what he did.
Yeah, he was a master.
So it all worked out. Look, it worked out nicely, Nathan. I told them they only found me out after 30 years.
Well, you're still giving it a good go, John. We got to give you that, no doubt about it. John,
well, we keep at it. We keep at it, Nathan. Anyway,
we will. Listen, great stuff as always across the season. You won't be going anywhere. We'll be chatting to you again over the next couple of weeks, no doubt. But great stuff, John, and we shall talk to you soon.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks, Nathan. Bye.